Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Muneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the headlines first. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations is holding a summit in Indonesia to discuss the Myanmar crisis. Junta Chief Min Aung Hlaing and leaders from Malaysia, Thailand and Laos are in Jakarta for the summit. Activists say security forces have killed 745 people since a protest movement emerged to challenge the coup. Indonesia's Navy says items were found from a missing submarine indicating the vessel had sunk. Navy Chief of Staff Admiral Yudo Margono said there was no hope of finding survivors among the 53 crew. The sub KRI Nanggala went missing during a naval exercise in the Bali Sea on Wednesday. In India, at least 8 people have died after a glacier broke, triggering an avalanche in Uttarakhand state. Officials say 384 people have been rescued and recovery efforts are underway in the Chamoli district. India has recorded the world's highest daily coronavirus cases for the third consecutive day. The country reported more than 346,000 infections and some 2,600 deaths overnight. Pakistan has registered more than 5,900 new cases and 157 deaths, with the tally approaching 17,000. Globally, there are more than 3 million fatalities and over 145 million infections. And in football, Bernd Leno's own goal helped Everton beat Arsenal 1-0 in their Premier League face-off at the Emirates. The win gives Everton 3 valuable points in their quest for next season's Champions League. The Toffees are in 8th place with 52 points, 3 behind 4th placed Chelsea. Well, these were the top stories. News in detail after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back now. Let's have the news in detail. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations is holding a summit in Indonesia to discuss the Myanmar crisis. Junta Chief Min Aung Hlaing and leaders from Malaysia, Thailand and Laos are in Jakarta for the ASEAN summit. This is Min Aung's first foreign trip since the February 1st coup that sparked Myanmar's bloody crisis. Dozens have gathered outside the ASEAN headquarters calling for democracy to be restored. Reportedly, ASEAN leaders want a commitment from Ming to restrain his security forces. Activists say forces have killed 745 people since a protest movement emerged to challenge the coup. Now, Indonesia's Navy says items were found from a missing submarine indicating the vessel had sunk. Navy Chief of Staff Admiral Yudo Margono said there was no hope of finding survivors among the 53 crew. Authorities said the objects located include a bottle of lubricant and a device that protects a torpedo. Officials also said the oxygen supply for the crew ran out early Saturday. The Indonesian Navy said a scan had detected the submarine at 850 meters, well beyond its survivable limits. The submarine KRI Nanggala went missing during a naval exercise in the Bali Sea on Wednesday. Now, in India, at least 8 people have died after a glacier broke, triggering an avalanche in Uttarakhand state. Officials say 384 people have been rescued and recovery efforts are underway. They said 6 people are critical in Chamoli district. The cause of the avalanche is yet to be ascertained. Authorities said the area has been receiving rain and snow for the last 5 days. Efforts are being made to revive communication network as roads are closed due to heavy snowfall. In February, a glacier breaking up and landslides in the state led to a flash flood that left more than 200 dead. India has recorded the world's highest daily coronavirus cases for the third consecutive day. The country reported more than 346,000 infections and some 2,600 deaths overnight. Globally, there are more than 3 million fatalities and over 145 million infections. More about the pandemic in this report. Amid record cases and vaccine news, the world still stands confused when the pandemic will start nearing its end. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau received his first shot of the AstraZeneca vaccine amid an unprecedented domestic surge. Chilean investigators testing the Oxford jab in 2,200 people found no instances of blood clots among participants. Brazil's health ministry says their vaccination program is being put at risk by people failing to show up for their second shot. In the US, lawmakers and non-profit groups urge the government to back a temporary waiver for vaccine to help poor countries. Meanwhile, in a hopeful trend for the US, COVID-19 cases fell 10% over the past week, but the wide gaps in vaccination rates across the country have raised new concerns.
We see on this map that vaccine coverage is not uniform across the country. Please note we have state-level data, but not county-level data for Texas and Hawaii. Otherwise, looking county by county, there are some unsettling gaps in our coverage. Some areas are doing very well, with greater than 65% coverage for those over the age of 65, as indicated by dark blue.
New Zealand has paused its newly opened travel bubble with Australia after a COVID-19 outbreak in its larger neighbour. The World Health Organization has once again condemned the global vaccine divide as it marked the first year of the COVAX scheme. Pfizer says it is planning a new version of its vaccine that can be stored in a standard freezer and comes diluted and ready for use. Meanwhile, the European Commission says it expects to seal world's biggest vaccine deal with Pfizer for 1.8 billion doses in the coming days.
Indeed, mRNA vaccines will be central to the EU's preparedness plan for fighting COVID-19 and other viruses. We are working with BioNTech Pfizer on a new contract. This contract will foresee the delivery of 1.8 billion doses for the years 21 and to 23.
In India, people scramble for life-saving oxygen supplies and COVID patients die on trolleys outside Delhi hospitals, as the Indian capital recorded the equivalent of one COVID-19 death every 5 minutes. World Health Organization says India's situation is a devastating reminder for the world to use all tools against COVID-19. In a tweet, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan expressed solidarity with India in the fight against COVID-19. Meanwhile, Pakistan has reported its highest single-day death toll since the pandemic began. The Health Ministry reported 157 fatalities and nearly 6,000 cases in the last 24 hours. It said almost 17,000 people have died of the virus in the country. Meanwhile, Pakistan's national positivity ratio has risen to 11.27%. More than 790,000 people have been infected so far, whereas over 686,000 people have recovered. There are more than 86,000 active cases in the country. Nearly 4,700 of them are critical. Now, the U.S. State Department has voiced deep concern over the escalation of violence in Jerusalem. In a tweet, spokesperson Ned Price said the hateful rhetoric of far-right Jewish protesters must be firmly rejected. The European Union has also expressed concern and called on officials to show responsibility and reduce tensions. In a statement, the bloc said incitement and violence have to be rejected by all. Clashes broke out between Israeli settlers and Palestinians after far-right Jews marched towards Jerusalem. Israeli police also scuffled with Palestinians for a second night amid mounting tensions over a ban on gatherings. Meanwhile, Israeli Defense Forces claim to have hit Hamas military posts after alleging that 5 rockets were fired from Gaza. Moving on now, in Afghanistan, at least 7 civilians have been killed during roadside blasts in the last 24 hours. Officials say 3 civilians were killed and 3 injured in an explosion in Ghazni province. In a statement, the provincial governor's office blamed the Taliban for the attack. In Kandahar, 4 civilians were killed and 3 wounded in a blast in Arghandab district. Police officials say the explosion targeted a vehicle carrying civilians. Meanwhile, at least 6 people have been killed in gun attacks in Kabul. These included 4 security force members and 2 civilians. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has approved the deployment of B-52 bombers in Afghanistan. A Pentagon spokesperson says 2 bombers have already arrived to provide protection to U.S. and NATO forces during the withdrawal. In a briefing, Ned Price said the U.S. is going to make this a safe, orderly, deliberate and responsible pullout. The spokesperson said the protection of forces is at a premium. He said it would be foolhardy not to assume that there could be resistance to the drawdown by the Taliban. The pullout of more than 10,000 U.S. and coalition troops starting May 1st. Now, Pakistan says it is not having any talks with India at the moment. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi rejected the speculations during an interview. Qureshi said the UAE is not facilitating any dialogue between the 2 nuclear states. He added Pakistan never shied away from talks, but it was India that had been shying away. Qureshi said for any dialogue, New Delhi must create a conducive environment. Referring to the US-Taliban Doha deal, he said it would not have happened without Pakistan. He said Pakistan has suffered a heavy economic and human loss due to the Afghan war and wants peace in Afghanistan. The US says sanctions on Russia have given out results pretty close to what Washington hoped for. A senior Biden administration official said the US wanted to act proportionately and be targeted in its approach. In an interview, Tlaib Singh said the goal of sanctions is for a more stable and predictable relationship with Moscow. Meanwhile, Russia has rejected allegations of destabilizing actions across the Euro-Atlantic area. In a tweet, Russia's embassy in the U.S. said its chargé d'affaires conveyed Moscow's stance at the State Department. Earlier, the State Department said it summoned Sergei Koshelev to show full support for the Czech Republic. Also, Russian President Vladimir Putin has signed a law to limit the number of local staff working at foreign diplomatic missions and other agencies. Putin also ordered the government to draw up a list of unfriendly states that will be subject to restrictions. The Kremlin says the law authorizes the government to restrict or even ban outright employment contracts. U.S. State Department spokesperson Jelena Porter termed the Russian move as unfortunate. She said the contributions of locally employed staff are important to operations and bilateral missions. This comes amid an escalating row between Russia and the Czech Republic that led both sides to expel diplomats. Several other European countries like Poland and Slovakia followed suit. Now, China says the United States is yet to find the right way to deal with it. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi made the remarks while virtually addressing a U.S. think tank, Council on Foreign Relations. Wang said the new U.S. administration still has misunderstandings towards Beijing. He said the U.S.-China relations are at crossroads, adding that both sides will suffer if confrontation persists. Wang said the two must work to strengthen communication and narrow the differences. He added the U.S. must explore a path of peaceful coexistence and win-win cooperation with China. The top diplomat urged Washington to stop interfering in Beijing's internal affairs and abide by the One China principle. More news coming up in this news bulletin after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, the Arab coalition says it has killed at least 45 Houthi rebels in the strategic Marib province of Yemen. In an interview, Colonel Yahya al-Hatimi said the fighting has continued on all fronts for 24 hours. Al-Hatimi said the coalition carried out more than 18 sorties, destroying 4 Houthi military vehicles. He said Yemeni government forces seized control of new areas and cut off a key Houthi supply route. Meanwhile, the U.S. has called for an end to the hostilities in Marib, saying it is adversely affecting 1 million people. In a tweet, State Department spokesperson Ned Price said violence is overwhelming the humanitarian response. Meanwhile, in Zimbabwe, 3 crew members and a child were killed after a military helicopter crashed into a house near the capital, Harare. The Air Force says 2 pilots and a technician died when the training flight crashed in Arcturus village. It is investigating the cause of the crash. Footage showed the smouldering wreckage of the helicopter near a house with a torn roof. Zimbabwe's Air Force complains its helicopters and fighter jets are old, but it has not been able to buy new ones due to sanctions by Western countries. A French police officer has been fatally stabbed by a knife attack at a police station outside Paris. The 36-year-old attacker reportedly came to France from Tunisia several years ago. Police say they have shot dead the attacker. Anti-terror police have opened an investigation into the violence. President Emmanuel Macron said France had again been the victim of a terrorist attack. In a tweet, Britain's Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said the UK stands with France following the tragic incident. Now, a vaccine against malaria has shown up to 77% efficacy in a trial of 450 children in Burkina Faso over the 12 months. Malaria kills more than 400,000 people a year, mostly children in sub-Saharan Africa. The vaccine has been developed by scientists at the Jenner Institute of Oxford University. Institute Director Adrian Hill said the vaccine is the first to reach the World Health Organization's goal of at least 75% efficacy. In a press briefing, he said scientists will conduct stage 3 trials in some 4,800 children in 4 African countries. The most effective malaria vaccine to date had only shown 55% efficacy in trials on African children. Now, Brazil has approved a 24% cut to its environmental budget for 2021 from last year's level. President Jair Bolsonaro signed off to the 2021 federal budget that allocates nearly $365 million for the Environment Ministry. According to the official gazette, the allocated figure is down from around $474 million last year. However, the spending can be adjusted over the year. Bolsonaro vetoed a list of environmental budget provisions, including outlays for environmental enforcement. This comes just a day after he vowed to increase environmental spending at the climate summit hosted by US President Joe Biden. Speaking at the summit, Bolsonaro pledged to double the budget and end illegal deforestation by 2030. Now, NASA and SpaceX have launched a 4-astronaut team on a flight to the International Space Station. The crew of 3 men and a woman is the first ever to be propelled into orbit by a rocket booster recycled from a previous flight. The Crew 2 mission blasted off from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. A SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket topped with the company's Crew Dragon capsule lit up the pre-dawn sky. The crew is due to arrive at the space station after orbiting some 400 kilometers above the Earth after a 23-hour flight. The mission marks the company's 3rd crew launch in less than 12 months. In Mexico, scientists have declared the Ayoloco Glacier extinct by placing a symbolic plaque in its place. One of the country's permanent bodies of ice, the glacier was located on the top of the Iztaccíhuatl volcano. A massive glacial retreat has been globally observed over the past few decades amid the climate crisis. A group of scientists erected a plaque that officially acknowledges the death of the Ayolo Glacier in Mexico that disappeared in 2018. Researchers trekked to the site of the now non-existent ice mass to leave a message for future generations.
The Ayoloco Glacier existed here, and it receded until it disappeared in 2018. In the coming decades, the Mexican glaciers will irretrievably disappear. This plaque is to record that we knew what was happening and what was necessary to do. Only you will know if we did it.
Iztaccíhuatl, which means white women, was named after the Aztecs for the mountain's feminine form and now the snow that covered it. Scientists have pointed to global warming as the chief cause of the disappearance of the glacier.
This plaque is not a plaque of honor. It is a plaque of dishonor, of the shame we feel. We are not talking about the climate change, but the climatic emergency.
Most tropical glaciers like those in Mexico are much smaller than their cousins closer to the poles. Snowfalls are now scarce on the 50 to 100 meter mountain peak, with vegetation growing at ever higher altitudes. Now, in Spain's Basque County, a group of chocolatiers is creating a version of Pablo Picasso's masterpiece, Guernica. The artwork represents the bombing of a small Basque town in 1937 by Nazi planes during the Spanish Civil War.
To showcase their skills and celebrate their cultural heritage, these chocolatiers are recreating Guernica. Picasso's piece is regarded by many as the most moving and powerful anti-war artwork in history. The immense Cubist painting depicts a harrowing scene in black and white, full of tormented human and animal figures. For many Basque people, the memory of the bombing and Picasso's visceral artistic response are a part of their identity. About 40 local chocolatiers are marking the 85th anniversary of bombardment in their own way. The chocolatiers have been working in an industrial kitchen in the small town of Lezo. The project has been a technical challenge amid the vast size of the painting, which is almost 3.5 meters high and 8 meters wide. But the group has tackled the issue by making 14 separate chocolate slabs.
So we decided to portray the whole Guernica. There will be some details that we may have missed, but I think it turned out quite well. The whole Guernica is reflected.
The final result of the recreated artwork will be shown in several locations, including in the town of Guernica. The effort is also an attempt by the chocolatiers to draw attention to the high level of craftsmanship the profession requires.
Now in football, Bernd Leno's own goal helped Everton beat Arsenal 1-0 in their Premier League face-off at the Emirates. The win gives Everton 3 valuable points in their quest for next season's Champions League. Leno bundled Richardson's low cross into the net in the 76th minute to decide the game. Gabriel Martinelli almost saved Arsenal in injury time, but Everton keeper Jordan Pickford kept out his shot. The Toffees are in 8th place with 52 points, 3 behind 4th place Chelsea, while the defeat leaves the Gunners in 9th place on 46, 6 points behind Everton. And the National Basketball Association, the Joe Harris, has helped the Brooklyn Nets withstand a late charge by Boston Celtics to record a 109-104-point win. The victory moved the Nets half game ahead of the idle Philadelphia 76ers into the top spot in the Eastern Conference. Harris recorded 20 points for the Nets, followed by Jeff Green adding 19. Kyrie Irving nearly posted a triple-double for the hosts, winding up with 15 points, 11 assists and 9 rebounds. Meanwhile, Boston's Jason Tatum scored a match-high 38 points but failed to secure a win for them. In another fixture, Los Angeles Clippers beat Houston Rockets 109-104 to back their 4th straight win. Paul George contributed 33 points and 14 rebounds to hand the Rockets their 3rd consecutive loss. And now let's have a look at the weather updates. That is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news. Take care.